Okay, so sorry about that, I'm back. So we got equilibrium, right? So another one is called kinesthetic. And kinesthetic then says that, sorry, that it's our sense of movement. So as you're sitting there right now listening to this, I want you to think for a moment, where is my leg, right? Without looking for a moment, I want you to think in your mind, what is the position that your leg is in right now? Okay, now I want you to go ahead and check it out. Come on, check it out, come on. Okay, so you knew that because you have this kinesthetic sense, is that you have these neural connections between various parts of your body and your brain. Think of people who are great, gymnasts, people who are great athletes, who's, they're able to get their brain to make their body move in ways that are just amazing. Think people who are divers and able to make, their bodies move in these incredible ways as they're up in the air. So that is kinesthetic sense, right? The sense of body movement, K-I-N-E. When you see that word, you'll see that in a lot of settings. For example, kinetic, in physics, the law of kinetic energy, right? So that's the seventh one. The eighth one is your internal sense. That is what is going on usually in here, okay? And so it tells us, our internal sense tells us when we're hungry, tells us when we're thirsty, it tells people when they're sexually aroused. Next time you're sexually aroused, say to your partner, my internal sense is working right now very well, right? And they'll appreciate that, okay? And so that, that's important. It tells us when you're sick, right? For me, I got this cold I've been dealing with, and so I get this little tickle, and then I have to have this response of trying to do something, but trying to cough out that tickle, right? So what's going on inside our body gives us messages, and we pay attention to those. Got it? Whether hungry, thirsty, sexually aroused, have to go to the bathroom, whatever it is, that is internal sense. Okay. All right. So those are 8 of those, and let's talk next then about sensory thresholds. And what is a threshold? A threshold is a dividing line between one area and the next. Good example is this door right here. You open it up to our storage room, and that is a threshold. As soon as you step through it, that's the threshold. And so the question becomes here is, what are the thresholds for the various stimuli that are around our environment here, or anything that's going on inside? Maybe you were going to get a little sick, but at first you didn't notice that this food had upset your stomach a little bit, and then finally the intensity gets to a point where, like, wait a minute, I feel sick, I feel lousy here, what's going on, right? Or the lights dim down to starting to dim down to a point where you don't notice it, and suddenly, like, wait a minute, right? So when we think of thresholds, then we think of moving from one area to the next, right? And there are sensory thresholds, which are limits, all right? That is, there are stimuli out there that our sensory apparatus, to hear it or see it or feel it or whatever, we're unable to pick that up, right? Let's talk about sound waves for a moment and go back to that as one of the important 8. And so when we think about sound waves, we think about the fact that there are 2 important dimensions for sound waves that we need to pay attention to. One is called pitch. And pitch refers to how high or how low that sound is. I'm not talking about intensity, I'm not talking about loudness. I'm talking about, here's a low sound, right? That's pitch. For those of you who play a musical instrument, you're very much aware of pitch. And so what happens is, here, let me give you an example. You go to a piano and you find middle C on the piano. Okay. Middle C on that piano. If we could measure how that wire vibrates, how fast that wire vibrates in 1 second, we would find that that wire on middle C, on a piano or any instrument that we could measure that vibration, is vibrating at exactly 256 cycles per second. Cycles per second, in other words, word for that is called hertz. H-E-R-T-Z, hertz, okay? Hertz then refers to cycles per second. So the question is, what is the sensory threshold for human ability to pick up pitch? In other words, what's the lowest sound that a human ear can pick up, and what's the highest sound? And the general rule is, it goes something like this. The lowest sound is 20 hertz, and the highest sound is about 20,000 hertz. And so we have this huge range of pitch. Technically, it's the lowest sound is 16 hertz. You know, just think of the lowest sound. You know, hit the sound on the piano, the lowest sound that you can get, and you're probably about 20. And then think of something even lower. And so what's interesting is that once we get to a vibration of less than 16 cycles per second, our ears are not able to pick up that information. For example, elephants, one of the ways they communicate with one another is through these rumbling sounds that we as humans cannot pick up with our ears. We may feel it. You and I are walking through the jungle or in a reserve in Kenya, and here's some elephants, and all of a sudden we just kind of feel something, but we don't really hear it. And it may be that this elephant over here is communicating with this one over here, saying, hey, there's some human here, watch out what's going on, right? And so that may be at like 12 cycles per second, or 12 hertz. And so what do we got going on here? We got that this is below our perceptual threshold for hearing pitch. Got it? Then as we continue to move up, what do we find is that once we get above about 20,000 hertz, then we are unable to hear. Do you have a dog? If you have a dog, your dog can hear up to, now how far can we hear up to? 20,000 hertz. Your dog can hear up to about 25,000 hertz. So there's this area here that your dog can hear. So your dog has better hearing than you, can pick up these very high-pitched sounds that are in your environment, right? And so how many of you ever blown a dog whistle before? You know, you're blowing this thing, it sounds just like air is going through, but instead your dog, shows up and says, hey, did you call me? It's like, really, I didn't even hear anything, right? So that's 25,000 hertz is the maximum the dog can hear. Do you have a cat? Your cat, get ready, can hear up to 60,000 hertz. Yeah, your cat has better hearing than your dog. Go like this right now. Just take your thumb and your forefinger. Come on, take it. And just rub it next to your finger here. But rub it very lightly. See? Right? And you probably can't hear that. Now, next time you sneak up to your cat, you go up and do the same thing so they don't even see you. Your cat will turn around like, what? Because this is making probably a very high-pitched sound that is below our perceptual threshold. Got it? And so, I'm sorry, that's above our perceptual threshold. Okay? So cats have very, very good hearing. Do you have a bat? Well, probably not. But if you had a bat, your bat could hear up to 150,000 hertz. That's how bats are able to, maneuver their way around in the dark. They did a thing where they had these wires that were here, and they're kind of moving the bats in this direction, and the bats were able to send out a sound that bounced off the wire so quickly that the bat could hear and determine where that sound was. Sort of an echo effect. Okay, got that? So that is pitch. Another factor that influences sound, of course, is amplitude, also called intensity. The louder the sound, the softer the sound, right? And so the average human voice, you're probably hearing me right now, somewhere around 60, 65, what's called decibels. DECI for relating to 10, and Bell with one L, actually named after Alexander Graham Bell. Okay, and so we got the intensity of the sound called measured in decibels. Decibels are on a logarithmic scale. So when we go up, as we go up the scale, we get that it's multiplicative. And so a sound from 60 decibels to 70 decibels then is not just 10 decibels higher, it's 10 times louder. Okay, and by the time, and then if we go up from 60 to 80, then that's 10 squared, so now that's 100 times louder. So if you are talking to someone and they start yelling at you, and you have a decibel meter that can measure how intense their sound waves are, you can say, you are now, your voice is 100 times louder than what you used to be talking to me a minute ago. So what's the big deal about decibels? Well, it's, what we know is that for people then who put sounds in their ears that are at high decibel levels, that as time goes on, as they age, then their hearing begins to decrease, and in fact it actually impacts your ability to pick up high-pitched sounds. And so what we know anyway is that people who live in an industrialized country like ours, where there's noises all the time, where they work around noises, where they are where there are machines, where there are where they put earphones on and blast sounds into there. One of the ways that you can determine whether someone's blasting too much in sound waves into their ears is if you are standing next to them and you can hear what they what song or whatever they're playing, then it's too loud. Okay, and yet what we see a lot of people do, it doesn't matter, I'll just crank it up. I used to work out at McCord Air Force Base, and these folks deal with jet fighters all the time, right? And they're supposed to put on these earmuffs. They call them Mickey Mouse ears, and but at times they take them off, and here's a jet not too far away where they're just starting to rev up the engine, and the sound is 110 decibels, right? Now we're talking about 1,000,000 times louder than normal conversation. So so there are a lot of jobs that where people today then have hearing loss, as a result of it. Just the aging process anyway results in people's ability to pick up decibels decreasing. And the reason for that is that there are three parts of the ear. There's the outer ear, the middle ear, and the inner ear. And the middle ear has three bones. They have these cute little names that go along with them. They're not the actual names. One is the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup. Those anvil meaning this part that is being hit against. And as we age, all of our bones become more brittle, including those three, which are the smallest bones of the body. So if those bones are not able to then take in the sound waves and send them to the inner ear and therefore to the brain like they used to, what you find is that older people have hearing problems. And so, you turn something on that has a high-pitched sound, and older people, will sit there like there's nothing going on. And younger people like, ooh, what's going on here? Got it? So that is hearing, and that's the essential part of what goes on with hearing. All right, I'm going to take a break for a second.